All right, we are recording the meeting. I apologize for not getting the beginning of the meeting. Okay, so just for the record, we just did an announcements and reviewed the agenda, and we're moving on to item number 2, approval of the budget actuals and review of the 23 adopted budget. And so I just want to introduce Simi. She's a brand new hire. She's our new management analyst. Do you want to give a little bit of background about who you are and where you came from?
Hello, everyone. I'm Simi. I just recently moved out to Milpitas and joined the city of Paul also tail end of November. I was previously living in the Central Valley, and I got married and I started a new job. So there's a lot of new stuff going on. And I'm going to do my best to present the information today
But you're a management analyst.
for the county of Tuolumne, previous to joining here for about 2 years.
Distribution. Are getting their loss.
And then share the fact that you have a master's degree in,
I have a master's degree in public administration from Stan State in Sherlock. And
Stanislaus State in Sherlock. And then you have a bachelor's in.
bachelor's in health sciences from Boise State. I was out of state for about 10 years in Idaho.
Yeah, so we're very lucky to have her.
Welcome.
Because recruitment is challenging in the city of Palo Alto, so we're still down quite a few staff, unfortunately.
State of California.
Yes, across the board. All right, so you want to go to the next slide?
Is it possible to make that full screen or larger?
Let's see. And it's also in your packet,
No.
if you want to look too, because I know,
It's about the same size in our,
I know, this is,
it's a lot of information.
The area, you make it 67%, you raise it.
Do the plus and minus.
it's not letting me.
No, it's not.
The max
Yeah.
out or something.
No, it's not.
Show.
Up there.
Oh, you're doing it. You
Oh.
can do the plus and minus. I can't.
Oh.
It's the
There you
joy
go.
of 2 screens.
Okay.
Multiple people.
Is that a little bit better?
Yep.
Thank
Not
you.
really.
And
Not really. Apologize. Typically, we this is one thing we just want to show you all the just so you have it, the budget and actuals for the entire, since the stormwater ballot got approved. But probably in the other future years out, we probably won't have this level of data in there. It's just we wanted to at least put it, while Simi's getting calibrated, we thought it would be a good idea just to look at all.
Yep, so like Warren mentioned, this is pretty much from since the ballot was in place. It shows the adopted budget for 2018 to 2022. And some projections for 2023, but as mentioned, I think we have a little bit of ways to go to tweak those numbers.
What is the budget for 22? Fiscal 22 or the calendar?
Fiscal. So we've got that in more detail in the next slide. It's probably better to look at anyway, so we're not going cross-eyed.
So this is a more in-depth look from the previous slide, just more zoomed in for fiscal year 23 budget projections. As I mentioned, we still have a ways to perfect the numbers and stuff.
spend a lot less.
Right, so in this year, so just to remind everybody that we have the base component budget, and then which is 65% of the ballot fee, and then the other 45% is for the CIP budget, and which is, it's delineated here. And some of the projects we had allocated money for the capital improvement program, and Michelle is going to go into more detail in terms of why some of that money was not spent in fiscal year 22. As you are well aware, we've been coming out of COVID, and it's been a struggle for staffing and just to move projects forward for
But those of
writing.
us that live in this town see a lot of stuff getting built. Some of which is our stuff,
Yes,
so
Yeah.
it's still going forward.
yes.
Oh, it's not that things aren't going forward. This is
Right.
just representing specifically what the money goes towards for the storm, because we're very limited on what we can spend this money on. It was delineated in the ballot initiative, so we're just making sure that that's where that money is going. So some of this stuff that we want to get built, like green stormwater infrastructure, we're still struggling with just to identify key sites and then how we're going to maintain it. So you'll notice if we have a CIP for GSI, but we haven't actually started built.
But we still need staff, even if it's contractor work, to watch it or administer it or whatever, and that's a problem, right? So I would think, so that may be why somebody's, anyway.
Yes, obviously, we've had a lot of salary savings due to the staff, some of our staffing issues, but it's not across the board. So it's which positions? Did you want to ask me, Michelle?
I was gonna add, and I'll talk about the CIP stuff, the construction stuff in the next section.
So
No, it's fine. And this is really the numbers that you guys probably will want to look at is the adopted budget for 23 year to date. You want to scroll down a little bit, Olivia? Thanks.
The next slide is from our budget book, just kind of outlines all of the projects. The trash capture device installation that's funded from the state of California, I believe, Caltrans.
Caltrans.
And then below is the projects that are.
The CIPs.
And this is just a collection about, I think, 5 years.
This one.
Yeah.
What should I be? Could you talk a little louder? It's a little hard to hear. Not,
Yeah.
in total respect.
Simi, do you want to just turn the thing around, put the speaker on? Because I think they might hear you. She's a little bit more soft spoken than me. I think most people are more soft spoken than me. Too many years of coaching and screaming at kids. So
there's more.
Yeah.
You can pull it closer.
they might be able to hear you a little bit
Yeah,
better.
the
Can you
closer
hear
you
her
get
on Zoom? Pam and Michelle? Thank you. Okay, good.
Okay,
Closer the microphone is to your mouth.
just an easy question. What percent, if I were trying to understand this from a calendar or from a year standpoint, what percent of the way through are we through the 2023 year? So when I'm looking at I think what I'm trying to do is look at spent year to date, and I want to deal with just year to date versus percent of year complete. So are we like 50? So September start?
About 50%.
Yeah, we start July
Starts
1.
July 1st and ends June 30th. And
Mhm.
we're at February, a little bit over 50%.
Okay, and so, as an analyst, or when you're getting to know this, would one be judging the year to date to see them nominally at 50% expended of the year to date versus budget?
Depends on the project.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
where the project is in duration.
yeah.
Phase.
Michelle, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I was just going to share that these year-to-date projections at the time we did them are linear. So it's just where we're at. It doesn't factor in any contracts that we might be awarding in the next couple of months that are a significant chunk of our budget. Or things like unexpected salary savings.
One more, I mean, I'm more like I've got an old brain, but are we on accrual or cash? I mean, is it accrual? So I'm trying to understand what's the draw, how does the number end up on year to date? Is it to check those out of the city, or you make a commitment?
So we haven't, Michelle, do you want to answer that one too?
Yeah, so right now, what's factored into our year-to-date is what's been actually spent or received on the revenue side and what we've committed. So that doesn't necessarily include things that we haven't contracted out for yet, but are working on. So that's sometimes why we'll see a big significant difference between year-to-date projections and the budget.
So a commitment, just to be, a commitment would be, we've entered into contract. And so would it just be the outflows in the, say it was a 2-year contract, is the year-to-date take in the 2-year, or does it just take in the outflow for the calendar year? Does that make sense?
So we allocate a certain amount per year besides capital. Michelle, you want to take that one? I think
Yeah,
there's
so-
different things.
He's trying to do cash flow now.
Yeah.
We're just
So
trying
the
to judge the
Year to
number.
date is what is actually spent.
Cash flow.
Cash flow. And so we do have, like you were speaking to, we have contracts that we're committed to, but haven't actually spent out yet. And that is reflected and captured in our full reporting document, not necessarily the year to date.
Good
Thank
job.
you. I have a related question and bit of confusion, and let me try out what I understand about it. I'm looking at the previous page. And I'm looking at, first of all, I'm looking at the fact that total revenue is 10 million and total expenses is 17 million.
Mhm.
18 million. And I think I understand that, but you can walk us through that again. Part of that is that the adopted budget line that's above the 17 million line is 7.9 million. And the actual year-to-date expenditures is just 902. So the budget, I'm gonna guess, is carrying forward unspent money for things that were already put into operation.
Yes, there was supposed to be a little footnote on here that all of these figures include carry forward and reappropriation dollars. So reappropriation dollars are for capital projects where we haven't spent in previous years. We need to roll those dollars forward, which kind of skews the like net position of the fund. And then carry forwards are what we were speaking about a few minutes ago, where we have committed contracts. We've like locked those funds up, but not actually spent it. So those things are reflected in these reports. And the main majority of why you see something like expenses being so much higher than revenue in any given year or point in time.
And Michelle, it's there. So it's not a footnote. It's a little
Oh,
higher on the
Okay, I
screen.
didn't see it. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't there the first round, the second round. So thank you.
Oh, good. There it is. Okay.
It's
Oh,
there.
yeah, there's.
Yeah.
I mean, those of us who toiled in private industry are used to it. We're used to things. I guess a big difference is that we can find things to current periods. And it looks to me like in city accounting, things just move over from one year to another and they keep on showing up, right? I'm getting nods. So.
Yeah, I just,
Exactly.
and
They
I
roll
feel
from
like
year to year.
I can't judge from looking at this, at the information provided on, that's what's being shown now or on the page. I can't tell individually, is this good? Are you running into challenges with having the money to cover the expenses for 2023? Or is it just fine because of the accounting situation? I just can't tell.
Mhm.
And
That's a fair
what I'm
question.
doing.
Yeah, this is just an accounting perspective from kind of a real world actual scenario. We haven't experienced any issues yet where we aren't able to complete the work or issue the contracts that we need to.
But there,
If-
I mean, there's a little bit of, because we have been also saving up money for some of the capital work. So that's why the capital work is also built in here
Right.
on the second sheet, the green that's in the 5-year budget book. We allocate a certain amount per year for those capital projects, and that Michelle's gonna go into more
Okay.
detail on that later. But that's the budgeting side that makes it harder to follow, because you have your kind of like your operating budget, that you're using every year. You have a base budget and we work off of that. And then in addition, we have our capital budget we have to allocate where we know revenues coming in future and when we're gonna spend it and how we're gonna, sometimes we need to build up a budget to make sure we have it for a project. So that, just to try and showcase that, I mean, we're putting it in the budget book. But then, of course, there's some back end calculating that we have to do to make sure we have the money.
Okay, so I'll wait for you to explain it in the story on this next slide.
Not sure if we're gonna explain exactly how you
Yeah.
want it, but we're gonna try.
But that's, yeah, Karin is accurate. We have been planning the capital program in mind with our revenue projections year over year. Obviously, we can't plan capital projects before we anticipate getting those revenues in. So that's part of the back end work Michelle does with our analyst team when we're trying to plan these capital projects so that we don't run into an issue in any given year where we need to award a construction contract or something of the like and don't have the fund balance to absorb that.
Some of them then have associated O&M and staff requirements. And so it's a little more complex than just a number. And to show all the nuances is a packet. In my experience, it's this thick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what you've done is summarize it for us, and I
Yeah.
think that's a good job.
And I can focus on the capital part, the money part of it alone to answer kind of your question is, I look at every year, here's our projects, here's the ones we've identified, here are the 13 high priorities. And we've got a couple projects in here, 3 of them that we've been delayed because of Google and securing those easements.
Right.
So we have not spent that money, which is why that money's been carried forward and it looks like we have more money or spend money. We haven't used it.
Right.
And when I put together this list of projects, I look at forecasts for the future. So I'm looking at 2028. How much money do we need? I even include a 3% increase because assuming inflation, cost of things are going to go up. So we estimate a higher a number for that. And then I talk with management analysts to make sure this is how much my project is going to cost. Can we move forward? This is what we're going to need for these projects. I think one of the reasons right now that tables are a little bit skewed is because we haven't been able to advance Corporation Way, West Bay Shore Pump Station, West Bay Shore trunk line capacity improvements. 3 significant projects that once we move forward, and I'll go into the details of where the status of those projects, but once we move forward, then to Bob's point, we will have that 50% spent, 50% of the year gone. So right now, 50% of the year is gone, but the money's still there because we have been able to advance certain CIPs.
I mean, I fundamentally
Yeah.
trust the staff.
Yeah.
I just am looking for,
No,
trying to match
yeah.
my understanding to what I see on the
Yeah.
paper in front of me. That's been challenging.
Yeah.
So
No,
maybe I'll learn.
I really agree, and it's interesting, we've been doing this in one respect for years, but if you were, I'm trying to understand, maybe you could elaborate on what the question, it goes approval of the actual, so what, other than trying to understand, what's the operating question in front of us as a commission that you want us to weigh on? Because
So
I
we're-
don't
yeah.
really, it's like a lot's driving by, but I really don't know.
Yeah,
what
so
the
we have,
question is.
later in the package, just I think it's the next slide or a couple, we have a memo that you typically do where you review the 22 actuals. And then that goes into our finance committee when we go to the finance committee for the stormwater ballot, basically the stormwater portion of the budget in the future. And that meeting's usually May. We just do it earlier because we've done the 22 actuals already. So we figured we might as well show it to you. The next meeting in April, we'll look at project, like more on 23 of where we're at again, and then also fiscal year 24.
The way I look at it is that we are not being asked to say the numbers are right in an accounting sense. We are asked instead to say that the money is being spent on nothing else except stormwater management, both operations and infrastructure.
Right.
So we don't look at the numbers to see that they add up, but we look to see that the numbers that are there add up, and they only represent the program.
Yeah, so we are very limited in our scope of what we can spend the fee for, yeah.
But, and we're, where I always got lost was, do we want to spend money on storm drain? I mean, on storm, barrels, and is it a waste of money or not? That's not my decision. My decision is if we had storm drain, or storm barrels, and that's been approved, is the storm barrel money being appropriated right,
Correct,
but not whether or not they're a waste of money.
correct. You can still have an opinion about it, but that's,
I mean, you know what I'm saying, I
Yeah.
mean, 50
Yeah.
gallons, is a joke, but anyway. But if we have approved the need for barrels, then all our job is to say, was that the way it was supposed to be spent?
basically, you're just making sure that we're not spending the money on other things within the city
Right.
that it shouldn't be spent upon, based on what the ballot initiative was and the voters signed up on. The voters were very specific about where this money goes and how it's supposed to be spent.
Right.
And so we're trying to make sure that we're forthcoming, showing you the information, the data. And we've also been, kind of trying to make it a little bit more engaging by showing you more stuff like programs that it's being spent on, but that's just more just so you guys stay engaged.
But like if you talk, like Tom, when he was mayor, I talked to him about this committee and I said, I don't understand it exactly. And he said, I'm not sure anybody does.
Well, I think Hal articulated it very well, and making sure that we're spending the money.
And actually, if you go back and look at the 2018 to 2022 chart, that page, you can follow the budgeted amount and the actual amount, and you see what happens about adopted budget year 4, and then the actuals on year 4 are 150% higher. So you're seeing that all of that money that's being allocated earlier in the process, but doesn't get spent because the projects get delayed and because they're multi-year, it does work through. I think of this in terms of the way construction works. If you hire a contractor to work in your house, he gives you a budget, but doesn't bill you 100% when you start. It bills you what he or she bills you in whatever way you agree, but it's incremental. So you still have the obligation out there, but it takes a while before you actually achieve paying off that total amount.
So just to finish the slides, and then we'll go to the brief memo, if you don't mind. So all that we wanted to let you guys know is that, the stormwater fee is based at the increase is based on a CPI, and it's very clear in the ballot. And that's a 4.9% increase. So we'll be going to finance committee March of this year with that, and then that will probably get rolled into the fees. Utilities Advisory Commission will be at that meeting as well, because they just talk about all the fees that are going to impact residents as one. So they include refuse and stormwater, even though we're not specifically under utilities. Just so you know what's going on there.
And how much are your construction costs going up?
Well, that's a whole nother.
Because that's what
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
CPI driven.
Mhm.
But of course, I would imagine that construction costs would probably double what you're able to get in an increased fee.
So we'll see how Michelle does with her future capital projects, if we can get the future ones. Yeah, Bob.
This has been a really interesting discussion, so thank you, because I was again trying to, as Hal helped us out on what the operative question is the money being spent on what was, intended by the ballot measure. So then it actually begs, the focus of your attention though has been on all these kind of numbers, and then you go broadly, don't worry about the numbers because we know how to do the accounting. So then it points me to what you don't develop is how good is the work where someone would come to the city and go, here's an expense and let's put it in this stormwater budget, and no one will know that we did the accounting correctly. So we just get these titles and everything's in there, but there's no presentation of this is how we assure that the integrity of a spend is actually lifted into the line item. And so we, if I'm,
So can you give me an example, Bob? 'Cause
oh,
just-
say,
Just-
someone wanted to fix the elevator here, didn't have enough money, so goes and go, well, let's just put it on the stormwater account. I'm just saying, so
Yeah.
then I'm sitting here going, well, I didn't examine actually the city's spending has integrity to make sure that it matches up to those line items. And you haven't, in a funny way, told me anything other than just showing me these line items, that the money in a way actually went to that.
Isn't that what the city auditor does?
Well, I don't know,
There-
but there's no
there is a-
presentation of
Okay,
that.
right. That's way down the ways below
Michelle,
what we are. We don't do.
Michelle, you
No, I
wanna,
know, but there,
can we let Michelle answer? Maybe she
Yeah.
can be,
Some of us have
She's our- she-
MBAs, but that is not why we're here.
right, so Michelle, you want to answer senior managing analyst?
I do think that's a good question and a fair question. I will explain,
Thank
we do have internal controls in our ERP system. And there are defined roles of who can actually make charges against certain accounts. So there's only there's a very defined by myself, accounting, Brad, who our director, who can actually make charges against these funds. And we have a whole level, like I have a document that we share with IT on who's allowed to post charges or commit contracts to all across the organization to various funds and cost centers. So the only people who are allowed to charge expenses in the storm drain fund are a small defined set of public works staff. So we have confidence that
Actually, his point though about the audit, and that's where all this stuff is, that's the purpose of an audit is everything we're talking about.
Right.
And how frequently is the audit? It's an annual?
yes, our administrative services department, so that's another internal control, is that we can audit our own stuff, right? So our administrative services department does an accounting audit annually.
So
Well, that's
a lot of
helpful.
things we're talking about
Yeah.
show up in the audit.
So there's a lot of controls that you're not seeing behind the scenes within the city.
no, I expected
So,
they were,
yeah.
they were, but it was. All I wanted to make sure, like when you read the sentence in the house, in the letter we're gonna do, it's
Yeah.
like, was the money spent on storm and none of us are talking about that, we're just believing it because it's a row. That's all.
No, and these are great questions, and this is good that we're diving into more detail, because,
Thank
Michelle, maybe you and I can also think about ways we could show the data in the future to give you guys more of that, but because it's kind of that delves in the details. How much information do you need, or how, so that's where we're at. So, yeah.
Just
I
sort
did
of a-
also want to say one quick thing for the committee, if the way that we're presenting or packaging our data isn't as useful as you'd like, we're open to input and feedback, and we can always repackage. And, the numbers are all in our system, and it's us pulling it out in a way that we think is meaningful for you, the committee. And if it's not, we can look at how to better present this in the future. So we're definitely open to feedback.
I have a sort of a qualitative suggestion to think about, is it's not, I have no quibble with the actual tables. And nor do I expect myself to be able to go through all the numbers and really understand it. That's what you're doing. But I think for me, since I come to it from a different context, and I'm kind of trying to absorb it, I was looking at it last night, I was like, I don't know, maybe a slight, just sort of a slide that gives you the story of what's coming up in the detailed slides.
Got
A summary of saying, this is why we're showing it to you. This is what we're trying to demonstrate, and this is maybe some highlighted stuff to look at, like what line items we are emphasizing. And I think that would take care of it, just to give us context and perspective and a direction. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Simi and I will work on that for next year, next April slide.
Okay,
Slide.
thank you.
And Michelle too. So thank you. The next slide is really just a memo, as I was alluding to before, where then you're looking at the 22 actuals. I highlighted the one letter or the one sentence that you guys have tweaked in the previously. And then on the next page after that, which is also in your packet, is the actual number. Yes, Ellen.
Are the actual 22, 23 or?
22, fiscal year 22. So yeah, it's 22, 23.
So
so
we
it's-
have only halfway done with the actual.
No, it's fiscal year 22. So it's through July 1 of 22 through June
Oh, we're
30th of
fiscal.
20.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I say that wrong?
6 months ahead.
July 1st of 21 through June 30th of 22. I got that right, Michelle, right? I always get these fiscal years in my head.
Okay, so we're looking back.
We look back to make sure that we're sending, because
Okay,
it's the way that so we submit the budget and then they don't do their final accounting until what did it finally get approved? I think Michelle just jumped off, but I think it's usually like not till October or November did they close their books? And then that's why we are giving it to you guys now. So
so we're not looking at the last 6 months, we're looking at.
you're looking at a year, over a year.
6 to 18 months.
Yeah, well, you're only looking at the year, the last full fiscal year.
July 21 to
June
June
of
22.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
What we're looking at.
Thank you.
That should have been clear to me, but I was.
No,
It's very.
well, it didn't
complicated.
help that I said it wrong, so.
One way to look at it is that when we adopt and send the draft February 2nd memorandum, and it has attached to it the information on the reverse side of the sheet. What I think we can look people in the eye and say is, for the big numbers on this, the 6,125,000 for the base program and the 6,267,000 for project and infrastructure, specifically the 4,433,000 for capital improvements. We have been given enough detail to know that those things are truthful presentations of how the money is being spent. And we've got pages of stuff that enable us to look behind the capital improvements program. And guess what? Building a new elevator is not one of the things that's on the capital improvements program. So
The only thing that maybe would be helpful is the amount of money that's moving forward. That came from before that wasn't spent, so it's, the budgets are including numbers that are outside the budget or whatever, so it's, so we can kind of track the flow a little bit when we look at it, make sure that does that make sense to anybody?
Yes.
Right?
But if you want a separate, we can always provide a separate one that's carry forward.
That would be helpful.
So that would probably be helpful. I mean,
So we
as I said,
understand
we
what-
can change this however you guys want it. Michelle,
Well,
Yeah.
something in this. I think at one point we always turn to this letter. And for me, in my role, something that was shared by staff, I find myself relying on, and I wanted to, and you're really good at, if I have an idea, you know how to like turn it into words. But I'm also relying on the integrity and controls of the audit process. And that I hope my elevator thing was taken in the right context. I'm more just knowing, seeing the line items, I've been hearing about the audit, the system is helpful to me. And even in the packet, when this comes to us, if there is that scrub that was done, it would be really nice to have some tiny little statement from the auditor, or however it's done, when you get the report, you get the green light, if that was attached in here, I think going forward, that would be a really neat, it would be helpful to me.
what I hear you saying is that looking on the second big paragraph,
Mhm.
second line, after the words 2017, we could insert, I think, without getting in trouble, comma, with the understanding that all of these figures are subject to the city's regular auditing process.
Yeah,
Been verified. How about the word verified?
Are verified, right? Yeah, so following the 2017, we would say comma, with the understanding that all of these figures are verified by the city's standard auditing process.
Yeah, that's fine.
I have another question, and I should know the dot measure better than I didn't. Does it have any deadlines for what we should accomplish that we haven't? I mean, it's great to say that we haven't misspent money on elevators, but
Yes.
if we don't get around to doing what we're supposed to do, and is that covered in our?
Michelle, do you want
I don't know what we're supposed to do.
What happened with the last approval, last ballot that was approved, was a lot of the projects were done afterwards. As a matter of collecting the money and allocating and soliciting bids, getting a contractor. So the intent is to complete 13 CIP projects within those 15 years. Will it be completed with 15 years? We've got 5 years already that have passed, almost 6 years that have passed. And we have only completed one. In reality is we've got the money saved up and it's there. The intent will be, we'll still complete those 13 projects. It just might take us longer. But that's exactly what happened in the last iteration.
Is that part of our job to make sure things get done on time or not? I don't know. I mean.
I don't think
it's
it's-
not spend too
Yeah.
much, but to not do anything about the other extreme.
No. I think in some regards, yes, I think it would be part of your roles, just because in the sense that, if they give you a reason why and you understand the reasoning behind it, then it's my job to convey that information to you so that you know why we're behind. Just so you understand it.
So should this letter say something that we're comfortable with being on schedule to get everything we're committed to be all we can do with your money?
Or you understand the process of the construction and the phasing and the involvement of getting the project completed. And you'll know where we are at this point.
It's
Just
just,
because one concern that, and I'm
Yeah.
being a little bit double down to making this up, is it sounds like we're kind of on schedule, but not really for lots of
Yeah.
reasonable reasons. But if it's because we can't get enough staff and we're not paying enough, we need to convince the world that we need to double the pay of staff so we can get stuff done, so we don't have flooding problems. I mean, it seems like, is that one of our roles to suggest
Provide
changes to make sure things get done? Or is that someone else's role? We're just here to make sure things aren't misspent.
So, I mean,
Wouldn't the first line in the second paragraph cover that? We've reviewed the expenditures, maybe expenditures is not a complete enough term, but we've reviewed them for 2022 and we've actually now reviewed them for the prior 5 years. And in that review, what we've talked about is the sequencing of the projects. And way back in year one, there wasn't any money technically because you have to accumulate the money. And so when you look at that, again, that 5-year budget, you can see there's money coming in, but they're not, the CIP projects can't really be started because permitting and all that stuff. So I think we're doing what you're saying, Marilyn.
Well, I'm not being critical or something.
No, I understand.
I'm just wondering what our charter is.
Well, I think, so I think
So that kind of covers.
To answer
it,
your
that we're putting
question,
our best with what
yeah,
we
that's
have.
how I would answer that
Okay.
question.
one of the things we've done too is we've gone out and looked at projects. So that in our own mind, we can see things getting done, like we watched that pipe going in and we've gone out and looked at whatever the wood swales and stuff like that, so that in our own mind, we can see money being spent on storm facilities. Not that we're supposed to prove it or anything, but it kind of goes back to Bob's point. Can we really believe that the money's being spent?
it's the checks and balances. And
Yeah,
that's
sure.
really what this is. It's just, it's, having this committee and part of the ballot, and we had it before with the previous one too. And I think 2 of the committee members were on the previous one with Joe Tracy, right? Were you on that too?
No, just
Just Hal?
Hal and Dino.
Hal and Dino
Wasn't Dina on the previous, yeah,
So we had 2, and you were on the blue ribbon.
yeah. I was
that's
on
why.
that.
they're all blending together. But so it's really just to make sure that we have
Glad
a
I'm not the one.
interested committee, people that live in the community that are reviewing this with us and sitting with us and seeing where we're at and knowing the schedules and talking to us about all the different things that we work on. That's really what, and it's really all about money though, is making sure that we're spending the money that coming in from the ballot, the way that the ballot was written.
I guess my question is, what are the provisions of the ballot measure in terms of schedule?
So I will put that on and have us look at the ballot initiative, and maybe it will be a good test for Simi too, to pull together some slides to show highlighting what the ballot is and what this group does, just to refresh all of our memories. Because there are some specific ones of what the money is, what's the base budget versus the CIP budget, how does that play in? That's
I guess I should have asked that 5 years ago, but.
no, this is, well, we also have new committee members and we have new staff, so it doesn't hurt us to refresh it, and then we'll have it in the files and other people can go look at it in the future.
Okay.
But we do have a lot of that already documented. I think it wouldn't hurt to have a conversation about
I
it.
also, one of the things that I'm feeling is that should we have an interested member of the public attend and have some comments? Can we quickly share information that would answer their questions or their concerns? And, I think what I sometimes see is everybody's very used to a certain set of procedures and terminology, and it's a little hard to come up to speed on it.
We also have other groups. I mean, there's the Utilities Commission that gets into the bolts and nuts, and so it's other things, other committees are looking at stuff.
But the UAC only looks at utilities specifically related projects.
Yeah, they don't.
They don't look at stormwater related
We
projects.
don't have utility division.
Maybe I could make a suggestion to answer Marilyn's concern. If we were to add in that second paragraph, we have reviewed the CIP planning and expenditures for the fiscal year. Wouldn't that capture, Marilyn, your concern about the scheduling? I mean, I'm just.
Well, I think it's very captured if it's in the ballot measure. I'm just on the ballot measure that it should be.
Well, we are actually also reviewing the
Yeah.
planning. We're getting there. We're not quite there yet, but that's
Yeah.
part of our.
Yeah, Michelle's next on the agenda, so really. I had allotted 30 minutes, so it's good
Yeah.
that we're having
Yeah.
other discussions. We haven't seen each
Yeah.
other in a while.
That's okay.
Do we need to approve the memo or?
Right, so and how I think, and what I'll do is I'll probably take the wording that you had, and if you guys all agree, I can get Hal to do the final, make sure I got it right.
Yeah, that's
before
So
we-
we're adding that half sentence that we talked about. I'll take your statement as a motion that we approve this one-page memorandum referring to the numbers that are on the back page. And I need a second.
Is the yellow sentence in there?
The yellow bolding will be taken out.
Correct.
So yellow.
Yeah.
The yellow is to remind us that was added a couple of years ago to the boilerplate because it was at the top of mind.
So it's not gonna be in.
It's
It
not.
won't be yellow.
I was.
Oh, but the
almost gonna-
sentence will be there.
The sentence will be there, but not.
Okay.
Unless you don't want it there, that's why I highlighted.
I
it.
was-
Okay.
I mean, it's really important to me. But,
And that's why.
coming into this meeting today and going through what I can't talk about, that's not top and center of my, if you want to say my mind, but it may be the other, I don't see, I am not experienced on our committee right now, that sentiment, and I don't, it's sort of like a note of emphasis that we put in 1 year. Does that have to become part of our boilerplate? And I would be more inclined to just take it off unless it's,
How does the group feel? I may have misstated what I intended to say. At the time we put in that yellow highlighted sentence, everybody sitting around this table thought, boy, we really need to say this. We got to go on record. We're not doing our job unless we as citizens whisper in the staff's ear that innovative programs are important to us. I personally see no harm in continuing to have the sentence. It won't be in yellow highlighting.
Yeah.
But I think the sentence continues to, in my opinion, the sentence continues to go on.
Okay.
And the language is fairly gentle.
Yeah, I like it. You're just saying,
Yeah.
this is something we like, we're not telling anybody to do anything.
Yeah, I'd be happy to read it there.
So with that discussion, we'll go back to the
Money
motion,
goes
which is we're adopting this memorandum, one-page attachment with the half sentence added that we've talked about. Is there further discussion?
There's one question I have,
Sorry.
about at the bottom, there is a footnote. And it refers to the fiscal year 2024 proposal. There are two places where it's referring to 2024,
Yeah, I'll
but I
delete
don't
that.
see anything here about 2024.
Yeah, we'll delete that.
Okay, yeah.
So that'll also get deleted.
Well,
Apologize.
I understand the rest of it, but it's when it starts
Yeah.
talking about 2024 and there's nothing there that, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with that.
My comment, and I know it's not trying to go to your item 4, but if you were to hear what I feel like right now,
Oh, I know.
going through the flood and what we endured and our poor neighbors that had the storm, were flooded.
Oh.
And if I were gonna go, the committee encourages, I would be encouraging that our storm drains work, and so we're voicing a little, and I haven't heard but this is our one chance to kind of communicate, and if you were to ask President Park what they
I'll
want.
make a suggestion if it's acceptable to the group. If we can get to our point number 4 discussion,
Let's,
there's no reason we can't go back and add
Correct.
another sentence to this memo.
Thank you,
I
that's all
I would suggest that we pass the memo right now.
okay.
And then we're going to go on to discuss other things, follow the agenda. If at the end of our discussion of point 4, we say, you know what, we think there's this one more sentence, we can go back and do it in the February.
I feel
Okay,
heard.
There were 20 that were flooded, 20 houses. And so it's not like the whole town, and that orifice of that bridge backed it up. So there's a lot of issues that are beyond.
So can we get to point 4?
when we get to
What?
it, there
Is it
issues that are
24?
more
No, no.
in the jurisdiction.
No.
We're trying to get through the agenda
It's
before
a
we get to that, the 4th thing on the agenda.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about.
Okay, but yeah.
So,
Yeah.
let's agree that we're adopting this memorandum as we just described it. And we have time in the meeting to come back and put another sentence in if we
Yeah.
want to.
Okay. There you go.
So with that understanding, all those in favor of that? I'm looking around the table and seeing all committee members raise their hands. Thank you. That should enable us to get to point number 3, the staff update on the capital improvement.
you have 5 minutes,
No,
Quickly. I'll speak quickly.
just kidding.
Okay, so you guys know me, Rajiv, Vicky, I'm not here, they're attending another meeting, so I'm gonna cover this in a slide, and feel free to stop me when I try to get through this quickly as possible. So to start with, I wanted to identify where the 13 projects are located. As you know, we've seen the slide before a couple times. The first one that we completed was Loma Verde, which is shown in red, for simplicity on the slide. The 3 projects actually that we're working on, the Corporation Way pump station and capacity improvements are along East Bay Shore. Those will discharge the pump station. Across the freeway on the West Bay Shore, also shown in green, is the West Bay Shore Road pump station. I want to refer back to Simi's slide just for reference. These projects are listed here, are also here. And you can see the way we talk about which ones are priority is based on the order that I've shown here. So just for consistency, another matter of kind of like a checks and balance, these are the ones we're working on. The Corporation Way, this also identifies the 9 pump upgrades and removal of 1 existing pump station. Next slide. Do you want to zoom down? I wanted to go over also the rehab project. This is the one project that you saw completion recently. That was just completed last December. $1.4 million project. We improved over 1,000 linear feet of pipes. Over 2,000 linear pipes got rehabilitated, which is that CIP2 lining. I think some of you guys went out to the field with us and were able to witness the work that took place. That rehab project did improvements throughout the city. There were a number of different locations that we were able to upsize where we had a 10-inch pipe to increase capacity to a 12-inch, which is the size that we can now maintain. It allows water to pass through. We also made replacements of segments of pipes that were corroded. So pipes that would otherwise create that illusion of a sinkhole, if the pipe fails and the soil collapses. We replaced a lot of those systems. So this project was completed last year. One segment in here, and I've identified as the last bulletin, Waverly and Capencino. We had a segment of pipe that we thought we were going to be able to line, but after further inspection and cleaning the pipe, we found a couple of larger openings. We were not able to put in that plastic device that expands and provides the structural integrity of the pipe. So we made a decision, maybe we need to replace that pipe as a whole. We cannot just line it. Lining it isn't going to be adequate. We need to do a replacement. And one of the reasons I have this in here, and you'll see that the fiscal year 23 street resurfacing project, we've got another team. So it's not just storm drain, it's streets. Streets is also supposed to go out to that area. They're waiting for my project to be done so that they can do a street repair restoration. I'm giving them money. We're giving them money to do our pipeline replacement. Vicky will work with them directly as part of this project. It's a way of making sure that the city's resources are invested working together. So we're not ripping up a street, replacing a pipe, resurfacing the street partially, and then waiting for another project to come in. Rather, we're going to utilize their contractor, our staff, our funds to pay for that. So I just kind of, show in here that money is being done and we're working collaboratively with others to get as much done.
But you're making some decisions to begin with about feasibility.
Correct.
Then you're making another decision about feasibility based on what you saw.
Exactly.
So maybe a little bit of that, like this project depends on this.
Yeah.
And so that, then when it doesn't happen, it gets automatically moved. So we're approving moving the money, I guess.
Right.
We're not objecting to it based on that feasibility.
Correct.
And that's what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
that if that kind of was in a column or something, it'd be interesting to see that. Is
Yeah.
that
And
asking too-
it doesn't happen often. I
But,
think,
but enough.
yeah, no, I get that. And I think
But
that
you're counting on a sleeve
Yep.
working,
Yep.
and,
it didn't work, or that wasn't feasible. And instead of not doing the work, knowing that we can have another group who's actually in that area, let's help, let's
do good job.
let's follow through and let's make sure we get the work done. So you'll see this in here where previously when I did this presentation, we said in 12 locations throughout the city. No, I said 13 locations. We subtracted one because of that one that we still have to do.
Excellent.
So, go ahead.
And so does that mean that other pipes nearby might be in worse shape than we think?
We did one pipe replacement in that vicinity already. We didn't do the other half. So it's the half that we thought we could line, turns out we don't. We inspect pipes on a regular basis, so we know the conditions of the pipe. This doesn't take care of all of our rehab pipes. This is phase one of multiple to come. We do have money that's separate money, not CIP money. It's replacement of pipes.
It's called rehabilitation of the
I
pipe.
just wondered if they're aging more quickly than we thought.
No, I don't.
was surprised to find it so.
I don't think so. I mean, for example, Loma Verde, we were replacing those pipes and they were actually in good condition. There was an instance in Loma Verde that we actually kept one that was cost savings. We kept the pipe that we thought was in really good condition. Let's just put another smaller pipe and create the same capacity, but providing two pipes in parallel versus one larger pipe. So,
in the commercial areas here, they're going all concrete.
Yep.
Our flow analysis has to be changed to some degree because we're getting no infiltration, we're just getting runoff.
Well, no, there's C3 requirements that they're putting in more impervious. So they shouldn't be just able to put in concrete without some C3 feature, which would float, C3 feature is a terminology in the municipal regional stormwater permit about flow
GSI.
water, green stormwater infrastructure, basically, it's what it's called.
Okay.
So no, they shouldn't, and we're pretty strict
So
on
when
that
they're
for any
putting
new
the street-
construction.
They go right up to the sidewalk. I have to believe that behind there somewhere is
Some-
going infiltration.
Somewhere else they have
Yeah.
somewhere on the site.
And the filtration, it's like the filter in your car. It blocks up eventually.
It needs to be maintained. We'll go through that tangent
But
a later.
anyway, I'm just,
Yeah,
but,
so-
but the changes in flow volumes are taken care of in.
They need to be maintained regularly and we have an
Okay, so we
inspector
don't
that
have to think
goes,
about that.
we
Okay.
have an inspector that goes annually and looks through that.
Okay.
those
And,
C3,
and I can
so.
go back to that if we have time afterwards, but that is a good point, and we can talk about that one as well. I'll come back to that.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you know, when we're looking at spending money, it's based on flow assumptions
Yeah.
that you're saying are taken care of with permit.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Quick comment, I love the map. What do the colors mean?
I think we had, I grabbed the map from our website, this color here on this map that you're looking at.
Yeah.
Looking at the same one. It was basically the colors represent priority, where the red would be is the most precarious, I think the yellow represents, it's, you know, it's not, it could wait another year or two. Blue is, we can add them to, we just need to keep watching these. So I forget the color sequencing.
So I love the map, I just, a little legend would have been
Yeah.
perfect.
No, and I think I had this on
That's
the.
nice.
All right.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
understand.
No, no worries. Next slide. So Corporation Way West Bay Shore Pump Station. So I quickly am trying to go through these, so cover for you guys. When the last time I presented to you, I made sure and let you know, this is the ones that are being delayed because we have to put 2 pump stations in private properties that are happen to be owned by Google. And Google, they're not prioritizing our project. We keep asking them to sign agreements. We go back and forth. They have new staff looking at them. At the end of last year, I finally got signed agreements.
Amazing.
I was like, it's a present, thank you, I'll take it. In further looking at those agreements, they had signed the wrong iteration of the agreement. They had signed an earlier version of the agreements. So I reached out to them beginning of the year while the storms were happening. I called and I said, did you intentionally mean to sign this? Because the last iteration might have been something that they rescinded. They did not want to do it. So I wanted to be upfront and ask the question. They said, no, our mistake, we signed the wrong agreement. And I said, but do you understand we're flooding right now in the city of Palo Alto? And this is I shared with them a few of these photos. Here's what we're trying to alleviate. Here are the issues that we're trying to prevent. Can you provide me with a signed agreement? What would it take for you to sign it? It's Google, it's me and versus Google. So Google, no, we're going to sign these agreements. We have no problems with signing the agreements. I think Google has had a number of layoffs as well, which is another issue that they're dealing with. But they told me that we're going to sign these agreements. We have no objection to the agreements. We're going to sign the latest version of it, which is enough for us. We are moving forward with completing the design. For now, like, you know, we're going to advance our consultant to get the consultant to complete the design, build the design based on the pump stations being located within private properties for the areas that we've questioned. So now we're Regis moving forward with our consultant to complete those 2 designs. So we'll be able to advance this project. I'm still waiting on the consultant to provide me, I don't have it on the slide, but to provide us with an estimate. What is their new updated schedule? When can we go out to bid for these 2 pump stations? And keep in mind, one of the issues that we did on this project collectively was take 2 projects that were pump stations, similar capacity upgrades together. We didn't have to do that. We could have done Corporation Way first, waited 2 years to construct it, and then done West Bay Shore. But we thought as a cost savings to account for savings of having one consultant design the same thing twice and having a contractor, giving a contractor security that he's got a job to do, he or she has a job to do for 3 years. We are taking both projects together, which is kind of adds to the delay, but at the same time, I think it's a long-term investment on dealing with it as a project, as a whole, as a bulk. While this was on hold, one of the other things, you can scroll down to the next slide. One of the other things while this was on hold is I had to keep our staff moving forward in order to meet the deadlines. So, and I brought this to your attention in the past, we advanced the East Meadow Circle, East Meadow Drive project. These are 2 projects, East Meadow Drive. If you can point to it, is below, sorry, just on that same, using your mouse, the blue line. Yeah, yep, that right there, that's East Meadow Drive. As all of you guys know, but just for the sake of others. East Meadow Drive, that portion, it was originally one of my first CIP projects that we identified. I was assuming that we were going to have limited money because of the Corporation Way West Bay Shore. This was supposed to be built last year, but with Corporation West Bay Shore being delayed, we advanced the design of East Meadow Drive. Adjacent to it is East Meadow Circle, which we have had some flooding. So I think if you scroll down, or was it up? There was
Yeah.
there was an image of a
Down.
flooded street. If you scroll down, there was an image of a flooded street. So we were supposed to, can you scroll back up to show you the flooded street? Right now, a portion of East Meadow Circle drains down to Barron Creek. But when Barron Creek waters get really high, that flat gate closes and water creates that ponding that you saw on the other image. So what we're proposing to do with this project is, one, install new pipeline upgrades on East Meadow Drive, upsize the system. And two, on East Meadow Circle, make that connection between East Meadow Circle and East Meadow Drive. So when the floodgates do close, all the excess water would go out to Adobe Creek. So
This is not related to land use change, it's just something else.
nothing.
It's always flooded. That's the
This
problem.
is related to the creeks having floodgates that are too low. And when the creek
They've
water
always
levels
been
get,
Too low, and they've always had this problem.
yeah,
Okay.
it's always been this way. So one of the items that I wanted to make sure that we identify, so here's the project objectives, which you can read. I think I've talked about these in the past, but I just wanted to give you just more information as far as, even though we were delayed on the other project, we're advancing these two other projects. One was intended to advance concurrently, but corporationally now advancing both of them. Next slide, I think we talk about what this will do, prevent flooding East Meadow Circle. The cost of taking those two projects, $1.1 million is currently forecasted. Again, I'm proposing that we could take two projects out to bid, advertise them as one big project, called one alternative one, and the other one, the first one, see what the bids that we get. So this might be an opportunity for, if the bids are significantly, say it's $3 million, we can't afford $3 million, we would at least do one part of this.
So I assume that's less expensive than changing the plastic.
Correct.
Right.
Changing the flat gates require permits from regulatory agencies. Because even if we update the flat gates, we'd have to raise the outfall higher. And we would, if to do any work in the channel,
It's a water,
That's huge.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
waterway.
Okay.
yeah. It
Essentially
would,
backflow preventers.
Yeah,
um,
right.
basically, that's what they're functioning as right now, they're preventing the water from going through. But so we've had the East Meadow Circle, East Meadow Drive, Vicky's working on those designs. I think on my next slide, we have a tentative schedule where we're at. Completing design this year, sorry, May of this year.
Pictures from this year, January, okay.
Yeah. And that's the business parkway area, so we don't get as many people calling or aware of it. Business parkway may or may not be open, and again, it's properties that are also owned by Google, so. I keep sharing them photos. Here's what's happening in front of your project. Get help, advance. So the schedule for this is completing design by May, soliciting bids in June while council is out. And when council comes back, awarding the contract in August, commencing part of the project in October and completing, I'm saying a year, maybe less. Typically for us, a year is also gives us time to check, double check, make sure. This gives us time in to do this work.
This might not be quite on the agenda, but obviously I've been thinking a lot about heavy rain.
Yeah.
Is there any technique to make the streets kind of deeper so that generally the problem is structural inundation? And I just was wondering, it's that tries to be hard, there's no place for the water to go, but at least we're gonna have it. Is that anything that anyone does? So when you look at capital improvement, you can go, well, we can make a pipe or we can store more on
Yeah.
street.
Yeah.
That's-
There isn't, here in California with limited height space, very limited way of making deeper. We can't go deeper. The only way, there's a couple ways that we've kind of re-engineered to go deeper, permeable pavement. So, but that's only initial flows. A lot of our system, everything, all the projects that you have in front of you are designed to meet the 10-year storm event. It's not even a 100-year storm event. It's not, a larger flows, it's a 10-year storm event. There's no way.
I didn't want to put you
Yeah.
on, I'm really interested in it.
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah, there's, I think about these things often, and I think about how can we store, is there places to store, is there capacity issues, can we convey, in cases where I can upsize pipe, let's upsize the pipe and let's reduce it to a smaller so that the pipe can hold
The
water
pipe is.
and then
storage
reduce it
vessel.
at a slower rate.
We don't do retention ponds here.
No,
And we don't
we
make
don't.
sure that the development does not, that meets the 20-year flow that was there before, so we're not making it worse. We don't do all the things that a lot of other
No, we do
cities
do
and
that.
municipalities do, but the development doesn't, I don't see retention ponds around here.
The rain garden thing.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, if you get into,
Michelle,
Like
she's
this-
actually before, she's with engineering over on the development services side. Let me tell you, they don't. Why don't you tell them what you make developers do?
So we have had a lot, no,
Well, it's true, I mean.
but part of the analysis with a lot of these developers, especially nowadays, with we have regulatory agencies that mandate for us to retain flows, we can
Right.
point to those and say, you are required. Just because you were
Yeah.
able to discharge flows previously on your other development, new development, not so much. The minute you start going in, show me the grading and drainage, separate, provide that disconnected downspouts. Up on Park, there's sections at Handover where they actually have this, what looks like a ditch. I mean, if you look at it, they raise their property, but they have an area now that looks like a ditch, which is supposed to
That's
control water. And ultimately, so that they're not also flooding their basement as well.
Right.
They collect the initial flow, they connect the high peak flows, infiltrate where possible. But say we had the 100-year storm event, in that circumstance, we have to make sure that also that their water discharges. So there's a bunch of different design elements that we do include and try to incorporate into the design.
And all new development has to have those.
Yeah.
all new, it has to do something.
Yeah, and they just ratcheted it down to even more stringent, the municipal
But you
stormwater.
talk about groundwater and.
Well, there's only so where the water can go, right? When
Yeah.
our groundwater
So-
table is super shallow.
I wanted to go over, and I can come back to these questions, but I wanted to go over one more slide and show you, and again, it's the same map. If you look at your nifty sketch or nifty table, you'll notice that one of the projects that I had here listed for SD 24,000, Lewis Road System Upgrades. It's currently still budgeted for fiscal year 25 and 26. I had about 451,700 million and five. Lewis Road is the long black segment on this exhibit. That's Lewis Road. In light of some of the recent storms, one of the things that I'm going to ask or consider once I move forward with Corporation, East Meadow Drive, East Meadow Circle, is Lewis Road was on my 5-year CIP. It was one of the projects that we had forecasted. In light of the recent storms, looking at the other projects in the vicinity, we may decide to advance Center and Hamilton instead, or portions of those. So one of the decisions, that you guys could have input on is just commenting on, do you want me to proceed with Lewis Road? Do you want me to keep it on the list?
But I'm not talking about agenda item 4.
Yeah.
But in particular,
Yeah,
as you look at this project,
Yep.
the court.
Yep.
That,
Yeah.
you could do something.
Yep.
That would
Alleviate that issue.
alleviate so I was
Right.
just inviting that
Yeah.
you take our experience.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of it, so
Oh, yeah.
that's why
No,
you
so-
might go, oh, only 20 houses, but.
no,
but
but-
it's fun.
When it's yours,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
big
I
deal.
just, so I,
It's a
that's a
nightmare.
little bit.
Yeah.
why-
so the
I
note that I
understand.
have on this slide changed consideration to the recent storm event.
Yeah,
Lewis
so
Road
you're
scheduled-
all over it. I just,
Yeah.
I wanted to
Scheduled
make
to fall,
sure that as you think about it,
Yeah.
it's not just this one,
No.
and you kind of look at it.
And-
and go,
And similar to what we've done with East Meadow Drive, East Meadow Circle, taking things in tandem. So it might be in this Hamilton Center, our design in-house. So this is our stuff, our staff designing. So maybe part of the element is we do the initial design for the full thing. Maybe we build that.
It'll be
Yeah.
a lot to our
But
neighborhood.
the
Yeah.
replacement of that bridge could be considered a stormwater project. I mean, because it's acting like an orifice.
But that's not what the ballot initially
Yeah.
I know,
said.
that's
So
what I'm trying to say.
so this is
It
where-
gets- it gets
Yeah.
tricky.
Yeah.
That's number 4.
Well, that is number 4, but no,
No.
and Bob, we totally understand.
Yeah.
Trust me, we understand your frustration. at
No,
what you
and I
think.
mean-
I'm not frustrated,
No, you're
I
passionate.
actually view it as
Yes,
Yes.
an incredible
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
really
Yeah.
glad that, it's it's really good news.
Yeah.
You know, that we can think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I mean,
Sorry.
those are the, yeah.
But we need a story to tell our
Yeah.
neighborhood that,
Yep.
They're not
we
forgotten.
can examine the infrastructure, there's an opportunity.
Yep. And I mean, I
I
think,
kind of got the feeling that that was what Ed was trying to say on the call, you know, so
Yeah.
thank you.
yeah,
Sorry to-
no, I mean, I think on our end, I'm looking for, one of the other things too is that we could, unfortunately, we've gone through, in order to move East Meadow Drive, East Meadow Circle, we had to get engineers to
Yeah,
survey the site, tell us what's where, what utilities are in the way, what, we have to do potholing. I think Rajiv was doing the potholing the last time we met as a committee on that site. Now it matters, let's try to advance those 3 projects in that corner and let's switch gears, let's move over to another site. But I want to make sure everybody's aware, everybody's kind of conscious of some of these decisions that we're making, which I think to me, this storm has shown us here are some areas that could be improved, and I'm going to try to switch projects up to address some of those issues. And I want to share with you all, just so that you're aware,
Sure.
here's what I'm doing.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah.
There are 13 numbers here, but I don't see the number 4. Did you combine 4, two into one?
I think 3 and 4 might be together. It might be. Let me see, I
I
can see.
think they are.
Yeah, I think,
Oh, West Bay Shore, well, let's see, West Bay Shore Road is 3. I just was looking.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out where number 4 went, but
I
you
don't
don't need to
see-
answer it
yeah,
now,
no,
but
uh,
just.
I think West Bay Shore Road, I think it's West Bay Shore, because West Bay Shore Road is 2 projects on the city's master list. It's the pump station and the capacity upgrades as separate.
Oh, okay, so
versus-
that probably was separate.
Yeah, they were
Okay,
separate
good.
at that point.
Yeah.
So are we
yes,
done with our staff update on
yes.
capital improvement program? Michelle, you have all the time you needed?
I do, and I can come back and answer any questions you might have afterwards. I'm here.
That brings
Thank
us to the highly anticipated agenda item number 4.
You're not leaving us, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Karen, do you
Yeah,
want
she's
to
leaving.
stage setting for this?
Yeah, I wanted to, I don't think we need to go through the slides in the packet. So I just wanted to give everyone, so our city manager gave an update to our council on January 9th to let everyone know in terms of the storm response for the large storm that hit. The fact that it was projected to be 1.5 inches and it went up to, I think, 4 to 6 inches in a short stead. And just, our staff was basically on 15 days straight, 24-hour shifts. So the impacts to the storm hit the entire city, and obviously, the storm drain system performed in certain areas, and then it identified and indicated areas that it needs more enhancements on. The San Francisco Creek projects, I just wanted to alert people to that. So that is the Joint Powers Authority. Michelle is our representative for that, but her funding for what she works on for storm drain is separate to then what she's working on for flooding protection, just so people know that there's a delineation there. Except you have the same staff, so there is a session coming up on the Pope Chaucer Bridge. And if you're interested in that meeting is February 16th. I just wanted to alert people to that if that's of interest.
February, did you say?
February 16th, and there's a hyperlink in here. They usually don't post the agenda until the week before the meeting, so I didn't have the most up-to-date agenda. They just had a meeting last week for the San Francisco Creek Joint JPA, which is the Joint Power Authority. So that's alleviate some of the creek flooding with San Francisco Creek overtopping. The one good story is that for San Francisco Creek, the flooding could have been a lot worse. I know it doesn't help the people that were flooded, but with the work that we did downstream on the levee projects for East Palo Alto and
The pump station.
the pump station,
Rear.
it alleviated a lot of the
Long
flooding
Verde.
that would have happened if those projects hadn't been done. Are there more projects that need to be done? Absolutely. Were homes impacted? Absolutely. We are still, as obviously as a city, trying to find solutions to get that so that we can move forward on that. And I know, Bob, the reason why I had item 3 on here is a sediment discussion. No, because there was emails going on about it. And I just wanted, so when we're in a crisis mode, you know, our staff actually did go out and remove pretty much the sediment, then they'd come back and it would be back on the street, and that's probably lack of communication. Then they would remove it again. But kudos to our crew that were literally there. They basically slept here. I don't even think they were home at all. So it's just a testament to a lot of other communities didn't have the response like our community did. And the people that work here really care about the community that they work in. A whole other side note is the sewage treatment plant that is also under my stead. We are still fixing things because the amount of grit that got pumped, they basically scoured, all the pipes got scoured, and it's like a sandpaper in the system. So everything is getting tweaked and changed and modified, and we will be fixing things for a while. So, but did you want to have more discussion on the sediment?
Well, it's more like I don't know if it's a rhetorical question, but there was so much sediment that moved, and yet we spend a huge amount of money on sediment control. So if you can imagine, we probably sent, 1,000 tons of sediment through our stormwater system into the creek. And then we hold our community to this non-detect standard ostensibly for sediment. And it made me wonder, are we fooling ourselves? I mean, it sort of like seems ridiculous if we're not allowing, we have this whole community set not to allow sediment to go out, and then we just put tons of sediment out through this, and we go, oh, that's kind of okay.
Well,
So what, I mean,
I think it's what we can't.
I'm trying to understand what's wrong with sediment then if we, allow. And then I did get, the second part was I did get asked by some contractors, I think I put it in the note where they're going, look, we work for the city, and this city comes out and does all this BMP, best management practice, all this stuff, and they just hold it to a standard, and they say, well, this is what he said. He goes, look at the streets, look at all the mud, and there's still, in front of my house, there's still an inch of mud in the street. I mean, it's still really bad. And why, I don't understand what the science is. I got a little bit lost on the
So I know, I wear another hat. I'm on the regional monitoring program steering committee group, and we do a full analysis on what's going on to the bay. And we do a lot of sediment studies, and usually when there's a huge storm event, you'll see the sediment and you actually can see it go out through the bay. So that's when there's a huge storm, it gets picked up and moved and changes the whole, like where the loading is. It actually scours the lower South Bay, picks up all the sediment, and then dumps it out past almost near the Carolina Islands. And so how far they can see it go. So the difference is when you have a big storm event, it's getting picked up and moved. When you have sediment during like non-storms, which is what we do want to make sure we protect, is that then that will get in when fish are spawning. It can cause ecosystem impacts. It also builds up sediment within the storm drain system, so then they do not perform in the future, because then we're always constantly going through and maintaining them. But it's just different times of the year. And also we do need to make sure that we're not overloading the system with sediment.
So right now in front of,
I just
okay,
want
go ahead.
So just to clarify, it sounds like what you're saying is a big difference between a huge storm that comes through with enormous volumes of actual water and sediment.
Yeah.
It's a very different sort of a consequence for the system as a whole, including the bay, to just, construction events or disturbances that are very local that are not associated with the storm and all the water volume.
Typically, you design for like 30 years event. You don't designed for 100 year, and what did we figure
Or
this one
Spain.
was 110 or some damn thing, so
This is on-
this is way off the.
So we're designing for typically a 10-year storm event. This one was probably, we're like on
50.
about a 50. It varies.
I don't
what
want to
people
be
say.
around.
There are
it.
50s of it as well.
Yeah, and then Bob, in regards to, if you still have sediment on your street, like we're trying to get another contract through because we've learned that it's very sticky and hard to get up.
Yeah.
So we're now having to go with a pressure washer and a back truck to get the sediment off the sidewalks and streets. So I know that Mike Wong, who's not here right now, but he's maybe
So
on.
Not to be, when does the city? So, right now, I have a lot of sediment I'm on data, a lot of sediment on data. Part of it's because cars park on the street and the poor, but
Can't get it up.
But that, in a way, is your problem as a city, to do this. And again, I'm still confused because we are not in the emergency situation that we were.
Correct.
Yet there seems to be a tolerance or an acceptance that we did the best we can. But on a commercial party, there's no tolerance, it's enforceable. And so meaning they're violate. So I'm trying to understand how right now the city judges that. We can, we'll get to it when we get to it. I know you're working hard, but there's no enforceability.
Is it
even
one
though we aren't-
construction related though that you're talking about?
No, this is the San Francisco Creek that
No, but I
overflowed.
mean, what are you talking about with the private sector issue? Wasn't that mainly
Yeah, I
construction?
think any. Well, I don't know the regulatory regime maybe as well as you do, but the way it was framed by the citizen was that as a private property owner generating a sediment load or having that's more enforceable. So I'm talking about it broadly, and it ostensibly would be enforced, but the city in the current situation seems to be tolerating it, even though we aren't in the big surge. So I'm wondering when you would judge that you would start viewing it as something that you think is enforceable, that you would be in violation of this stormwater management plan that maybe the city holds.
Well, so when there's a large construction site over an acre, that's what we go out and inspect, and that's where it requires a bioswales, requires a stormwater pollution prevention program,
Right.
inspections. But I think, and Pam, you can step in if I'm saying anything incorrect here, but my understanding is if they had everything in place on a large construction site and, they had dirt and debris and everything going on, and this massive storm hit and it left their site, we wouldn't be finding them because it's kind of like beyond what they could actually control.
An act of God.
Right, it's.
Yeah.
Do you wanna,
I want to add a couple of things too. I get what you're saying, and it's hard to quantify. It's hard. We're not comparing apples to apples. We're comparing apples to, I don't know, watermelon. Because when a construction project site, and Pam's on this call, and she can also back up on some of this conversation. When I was working on the creek widening project, the project that we all benefited from as a city, agencies, communities as a whole, we were working and we had it with Valley Water. Valley Water's contractor did not have the right barriers around the catch basins, the silt, the fences, the material needed to keep the sediment off the roads on a regular basis. Things that, if it rains, if it's sprinkle, or if someone turns on their irrigation and water corrodes, we are there to capture those things, those elements. Pam and her team were able to identify, here's a problem, fix the problem. It's a city project, or it's a multi-agency project, fix the problem. What you're trying to compare is the watermelon, the project that it's not a project. This storm event doesn't constitute as a project. Nobody instigated it. It wasn't something, it occurred, and we're trying our best to clean up. I get your circumstances are a little bit different, but it's not a project.
So it's not
Not
because Karen or someone said, oh, I'm more just surmising an email, and some of it made sense, but I just want to make sure. that, oh, we're in a big storm,
Yeah.
so we don't
Letting it
have
go.
we
No,
don't-
it's
We don't have a,
no,
nothing, we're kind of off the enforcement
no.
regime and now, but I was wondering how long we can. I was wondering if the city had really dirty streets, it's
Yeah.
covered with silt.
Yeah.
Would the Regional Water Quality Control Board go, you can't be a city with dirty streets that has silt going into the storm drain because that's not allowed anymore. And I don't know if that's a requirement or if you're. So I didn't know if there's a grace period on when the city finally has to be cleaned up, like the silt on there.
In different cities, Carson City, for instance, was fined $100,000 for allowing a contractor to take silt and wash it into the storm drain. A violation of their NPDS permit. And that was, so that's one example. Another example is Bellevue, Washington, which was kind of set the whole deal for drainage systems and all that stuff, and neighbors were suing each other. So the guy upstream, that downstream the guy, and they were winning for suing the guy upstream. So there's all kinds of things going on that happen, but I think all the city can do is keep the big events handled, When you get past the 30-year storm, it gets tough. And hopefully in our lifetime, if that's really the 50, we'll never see another one.
I know, let Pam, because she's our regulatory compliance manager, so I want to give Pam an opportunity.
Yeah,
as well.
thanks, Pam. Interesting.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that what I had tried to communicate to Bob and was that during the storm, there is language in the permit that allows us to prioritize health, life and safety above cleaning any pollutants. And so during that storm, which, basically lasted 2 weeks, with a few breaks here and there, during that period, we're allowed to put life and safety first, and we could do as much as possible, which the city did, to clean that sediment and put street sweepers through. But if sediment is left, that we can say, well, we don't have enough resources to clean it all because we're trying to, provide sandbags to help people, et cetera. And so that is what happened during the storm. And now, because of such a big storm, now we're dealing with the impacts of the cleanup. And I think Mike Wong, I was able to just give him a link so he can tell you about the actual cleanup, because that's under Public Works Operations, which he manages.
Thanks, Pam. Yeah, Mike, did you want to say something? Also, I just want you guys all to know, this guy has been here during the storm, 12-hour shifts, 12 days, and he's a manager, so he's not getting compensated. So this is just someone who cares about your community. Just wanted to clarify that. So thank you, Mike. Do you want to give some more updates on the cleanup? So we can't hear you.
You're mute.
You're muted.
If you're trying to say something.
Maybe somebody else has to give him unmuted.
No, he's there.
Sorry,
Okay.
I was here during the whole meeting, but apparently I joined as a participant instead of a panelist, so I could hear you guys talking about me, but you couldn't hear. But yeah, it was there were several 24-hour shifts there nonstop. I was very impressed by the dedication of our staff. It's the morning after the rain started, we called everybody in. Everybody was all committed and energized, and went many days straight with sacrificing New Year's Eve and their families for a long time. And the issue about the mud and the sediment, we saw the buildup. They were causing storm drains to clog. It was causing the storm drains to clog, and we were out there clearing out the storm drains and getting the mud and the sediment out of the storm drains. And then after the rains, we immediately followed up by trying to remove all the mud and sediment from the streets and sidewalks. That proved to be quite labor intensive, and that we had to take a step back and figure out different ways to be more effective at it. We found out it was becoming very labor intensive. We initially tried it with what we call a tandem of sweepers, where we tried to use those construction broom sweepers that you see at big construction sites to keep the construction trucks from dragging mud and dirt onto the streets, to use those more aggressive big broom sweepers on the back of the sweeper truck, and then followed it up with the air sweeper behind it. But when you're battling 3 to 4 inches of solid mud, it wasn't having much effect. So we had to resort to scooping up the mud first by mechanical equipment, and then and oftentimes using crews to manually pick up the mud, and then obviously we can't put it back down the storm drain. So here's where more time is involved, is we had to use factor trucks to be able to suck up all the mud and then bring it back to we have to dispose of it properly. So we have to bring it back to the yard and let it dry and dispose of it the proper way. We're probably at the rate we're going, let's see, we've spent 30,000 so far, and we've only disposed of 1/3 of the mud. So we have over $100,000 worth of mud disposal so far, and we're not even done yet. We've cleaned. The challenge is in some streets that we cleaned, as soon as we cleaned it, we found out that residents were throwing mud off there. I mean, kind of a curse sometimes when you're too quick to respond, because the streets were clean and then residents started throwing mud from their sidewalks and driveways, not the sidewalks, sorry, their pathways and their driveways back onto the clean streets that we just cleaned. And then they said, "Oh, you never cleaned our streets," to get us to come back and clean it. So a lot of double effort there. And then once we got the streets cleared, most of the streets cleared, we started hitting the sidewalks. There was no way that the public works crew would be able to handle this all on their own. So we asked utilities for assistance. They actually have 2 Vector trucks and 1 hydro excavator to be able to suck up the mud. And they gave us a crew of like 20 something people to double our efforts, because we had a crew of about 20 something people. So we doubled the crew size, and very labor intensive. And then, when we thought we were making good headway, then we would have another storm event that would flood the same streets again. And so we would hit the same areas, more than once, obviously. And so we think we hit the bulk of it, but we're trying to get to those, spots that, as the gentleman earlier mentioned, there's still some spots that, we haven't identified yet or got to. So we're actually relying on the community to report those areas. So if you want to, email Karin where your exact address is, we'll send someone out and we'll get that cleaned up. So yeah, we're trying to get down to the nitty gritty after we already spent much labor and time trying to get to the worst spots.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
So yeah, and this is a citywide effort, so that's why it's not really highlighted in here per se. So we're not sure where the $100,000 for sediment disposal is going to come from within the city, but it won't be coming out of this budget. So
Was it your own equipment that did all this, or did you have to lease
We-
dump trucks or
it
whatever?
was a combination of both, right, Mike?
Right. So we actually don't have all the sweeping equipment that we needed. So we actually had to rent, contract out with actually 2 sweeping companies to get this amount of sweepers that we needed.
So it's kind of like an emergency budget needs item that
Yeah.
needs to be there, yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
probably-
just saying it won't come out of this budget. That's
The
the main thing.
focus- I just want to say the focus, Mike, I really appreciate what you're doing, and I'm right near Ashby, and I watched, it was like ice skating, these things going around, the street was so muddy and deep, but I just was trying to understand when we get how this, it's more like a question for Pam, when we finally come, when is the line that we go say that we would put, what do we call the hay things around the bio?
Straw bottles.
And sort of protect our storm drains so that as the sediment comes flowing down, we aren't letting that go in the storm drain. And I just don't know when we come to that juncture that we go, look, we're back to our normal basis with
So
this. And
we
that,
don't-
just wait someday. It'd be interesting to understand. I don't think I have anything more on set.
we don't like contaminants in our storm drain either. So that's why we're constantly monitoring it, and just because the storm's over and we're doing the cleanup, we're still inspecting the storm drains and the catch basins because we need to make sure that they're clear for the next storm as well. So it hasn't stopped.
Okay, thank
And it's supposed to start tonight.
Again, not
So,
another bomb.
Not a bomb,
Well-
but who knows?
Well, and just to let you know how aggressive we are in trying to keep everything functional. I mean, you know that some of the areas that were flooding were actually in other jurisdictions in county like Oregon Expressway or El Camino, which is Caltrans. And, you know, I mean, we don't wait for them to respond. We give them the opportunity, we talk to them, we give them the opportunity to respond. If we're not getting the response that we need, we actually kind of just bully our way into their jurisdiction and just take care of it. So just, you know, I mean, everyone's well aware that El Camino at University flooded a couple times. And, you know, we actually went in there to help clear out all the mud and the debris out of their pump station. And just this week alone, we knew that with future rains that, you know, and you know, lack of maintenance on El Camino itself with overgrown vegetation blocking the water flow along the street, that and the debris and the mud, that it would just get sucked back down into their pump station and causing flooding again. So we actually spent 2 days clearing out all the vegetation off the street for them that is would interfere with their water flow and the mud and things.
Okay. You know, the thing I really wanted to, maybe, I don't know if I can do this, Hal, or if it's way too impromptu, but as if and maybe it's not even our scope, but it'd be really great if our commission could make a motion of support and honor to the Public Works Department and utilities and all the amazing work that they did. I think my questions are more technical, but I really, I don't know if we can weigh in, but I think what you and your group did is incredible. It certainly saved my house, and we appreciate it. And the curse of an environmental engineer is you worry about the bugs and the bunnies too much, but the big issue, you did the hard work.
I think it's even more than that. The system seems to have functioned a lot, pretty adequately, given the conditions it had. You know, so it's not like a total failure.
No,
The
I mean-
things
I don't know if the
that have
motion
been built.
made, Hal, or if that's anything that we
But-
can do.
but-
or
Well,
else.
So we
I don't
do
think
two parts.
I don't think any of us will be fired from this commission if we add a paragraph to this
Right.
letter that the council has to look at.
Thank you.
And here's what I've been playing with.
Okay.
Based on the city's recent experience with the December 2022 and January 2023 storms, we would like to add the following. We recognize that truly exceptional storm events will always have unforeseen consequences. We would encourage the city to consider in its future planning for storm emergencies the unusual experience with the X neighborhood with the sediment and sediment removal. Right. And we support and applaud and honor the amazing work done by the X and Y departments in dealing with the situation.
I think that's.
We'll add a little more about the things that we're talking about here that are getting built. And the whole capital projects seems to be working pretty well. You know, so the things that we're looking at, how money is being spent on capital projects seems to be worth the dollars that are being spent on it. So that's kind of to begin with. And then we had an event that was beyond what normally you plan for, and then how great a job was handled. You know? So the two go together, but what you guys are doing daily to make things built seems to be working, I think.
Well, the nice
So-
thing is that we can adjust, like what Michelle is alluding to, and that's the first thing Michelle and I, we talked about planning for this meeting. Can we shift any of the projects to help the communities that were impacted, right?
Yeah.
So that's me, I don't know how, you and I are gonna need to work, because you're
Okay.
eloquent. I didn't get it all down.
I didn't get it all either. But, so what I'm thinking about. Trying to decide how we can. Agree on wording as a process measure. Maybe we can do it by email.
I've always been very impressed with your ability
You're
to
unduly
do
kind,
that.
but
And the only,
we have a practical need here. What I'm floundering a little bit, but what I am trying to say is that based. And I want to add on your thought that we observe that the city's planning and execution of capital improvement projects have been working well.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Have been working
And
well.
that
They
we
added to the resiliency of the system.
I mean, and you can identify them with downstream projects.
Good word.
So,
And the resiliency of the system. So,
water system.
right,
I'll write this down before I get out of the room and maybe we'll circulate it.
Okay.
What I'm grasping for is to say. We feel we should add, based on the city's recent experience. With the unusual storms in December 22 and January 23. That although we recognize that truly exceptional storm events will always have unavoidable consequences. Right? We should take into account the experience of X neighborhoods with the sediment flow and sediment removal in planning for future emergencies.
So you're trying to, so something like develop a contingency response in after those
And
events?
developing responses for future emergencies.
Okay.
We can put in the sentence, we observe that what the city has been doing with planning and implementation of capital projects has been working well and has added to the resiliency available. The resiliency of the city's
Existing-
infrastructure.
Existing system.
And we applaud, we support, applaud, and honor the amazing work done by the Lion Z department. Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that sounds about right.
Yes. What's important to modify what we do.
Why don't I try to, Karen, how does this work in terms of Brown Act compliance and what we can do and what we can't do
Task force.
without a meeting?
No, you send it to
Yeah, you send
Karen,
it to me and then I
and
can
she
send
can
it out.
send it to all of us. We don't talk to each other. We talk to Karen in
All right.
response.
So
Karen,
you
I'm
should,
sorry.
you should say, we know what you just said us, we think Hal got the following things wrong. And you feed
And
that back
to me and then I'll
Right.
send it out.
Karen, and then I'll work it out based on
Sure.
Karen's.
Yeah.
That's
just a
Yeah.
little side note, this town is 65,000 people, is that what we are? And for this podunk little place to do what it does is pretty amazing, I think. And I mean, I've worked all kinds of places that are King County and City of Seattle and things like that, that maybe don't respond as well. And so I think just a good, some kind of comment somehow to put it into perspective of what gets achieved here with the size of this community.
Right, and I also think I would love it, since you guys are and I don't know if this is the place to put it, but also the fact that the storm drain system is designed for a 10-year storm.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think a lot of the people in the community
Nobody knows
understand that.
They don't understand.
And that this is a 50-year storm. So actually, even though it's designed for a 10-year storm, it did perform pretty good for a 10-year storm.
And
that
actually,
was one, I was just curious because we really didn't hear any, where there. Our neighborhood's flooded, so I can't really talk about the storm system.
Right.
But where we did the other projects, were there observations? Because I didn't hear any state, I mean, everyone we were applauding, but I didn't actually hear it stated, did these systems work better? Did someone go out and observe and go, gosh, the problem we used to have isn't there anymore? When we did those projects?
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
that's
and,
great.
and I think, for example, one of them, Cedar Creek Pump Station, starting with that one.
Okay,
Previously, we didn't have it, that pump station got built in 2007, so and I wasn't even here for the 98
yeah,
event,
you weren't even born.
right?
You're too kind.
So,
But-
I will entertain a motion that the previously approved memorandum of the city council will be modified by adding 2 or 3 sentences that the staff will work out in consultation with the chair based on the discussion that we have had in this committee meeting, right?
Yeah.
Is there a,
So moved.
I so move.
Second.
So the motion is that several sentences will be added to the letter that we've already approved by the staff, working with the chair, based on the discussions that we've had in this meeting. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of that motion? Good. So that's what I'll try to cook up. I'll send it to Karen. Your comments are absolutely welcome, and you should send your comments to Karen, who will then feed them back to me, and we'll. Okay. Thank you. That take care of, do we need to do more? How do you got item number 4?
Well, I just was asking for, so the system works better. How about the neighborhood where all the bioswales, I'm trying to find Cali.
Yeah.
How
Crescent
did-
Park, not Crescent Park,
Not
sorry,
Crescent Park.
Southgate.
Southgate.
How did Southgate do?
I think we had a few calls, I mean, I wasn't out every
No, I'm
single
just
site,
curious.
so we did have a few calls for flooding, but your neighborhood got the most.
Oh, I know. that.
In comparison to 98, I think your neighborhood probably had 5 or 6 feet of water.
Mhm.
Granted, that was a 70-year storm event with
No,
50-year storm.
but the
other-
Southgate did, the
function-
system seemed to
We
work.
had, the system seemed to work.
Great.
The system seemed to work. We had some ponding, which could have been, who knows what the reason behind some of those pondings, but nothing as significant, I think, as your area.
No, but
but
I
in
was just
general,
curious
yeah.
how the balance of
No,
the city went. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Pam wanted to just make one comment.
Also, Bob, if you could keep it, eventually they'll keep the water in the creek.
I don't know if you
Oh, well,
read the New York Times and some of the
Yeah,
things
well-
that we're
climate change.
we're not out of the woods, we're doing better, but
Yeah.
flooding. I think flooding in the city is gonna still exist.
Let me restate. Eventually they'll take Hope Chaucer Bridge and the new bridge out, and at least those won't be
Oh, yeah,
diverting the water onto the streets. So-
Yeah,
No, and
no.
I mean, and I think one of the things, I mean, I was living it, right? So I got the call at 7 in on New Year's Eve, and we were on call the rest of the weekend, and it just, my days blurred. I'm like, when did January end? I don't remember. But Mike and I were on these calls 24/7 all night, predicting storms, anticipating what was gonna happen. All I did to make is 2 calls, one to Menlo Park, one to East Palo Alto, and both individuals in both agencies spread out the word Valley Water. I was recruiting, getting sandbags from Valley Water those days.
Wow.
So we were getting bags, we were getting sand, we were getting as much as we could got to us, because we were the one city that was affected the most, I think, than any other city. Dave and I were talking about this earlier. When we first got the storm, we thought, how could we have 4,000 CFS in the city's system when everywhere else in the South Bay was reporting 600, 200 CFS? So we thought there was an anomaly, but we internally knew that that number had to be accurate. People were calling in and talking about how much rain we had. So we had a lot more water than anticipated. Given the circumstances, Valley Water expedited and got us sandbags those same days during a holiday weekend when a lot of places were closed. So we were able to move those quickly on our direction. Crews on East Palo Alto, I made a call to East Palo Alto and said, I'll be right there. The people were necessary. I mean, it could have been worse if a lot of the tree debris that we were getting during the high storm events weren't being able to be moved out of there. We had people, not only Palo Alto, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, moving debris at all the bridges, working together. I
That
mean,
was
and Mike can provide
Yeah.
more feedback on this, because he was actually in the boots on the ground, and I was trying to work.
Pulling the logs out.
Some of the information was trying to figure out how do we get to some of these trees, without compromising life and safety for staff as well. So one of those elements was trying to figure out how do we get this, and working together. There was times that I got a call saying, we're gonna close down University Avenue out of Palo Alto because we need to set up crews on University Avenue to remove some of the debris.
Yeah.
Brad, we're closing University Avenue, like, you know, we'll get our hands slapped later. But Mike was out there trying to help out, making sure that we had the crews, the stuff available, the teams working together, multiple agencies. At one point, we even had San Mateo County, because Menlo Park, East Palo Alto are in that county, offered, said, if you guys need, we have a claw, you know, that
Yeah.
removes the debris, 47 foot. We are working with 17, 21 foot
Yeah.
claws, multiple locations. So people were trying to cooperate, you know, let's figure it out. Let's fix it first. Let's figure out the logistics later. So there was a lot of stuff that was going on behind the scenes during that weekend. You know, at one point we had one of the storms, Brad was here, our director was here, and we didn't know what size storm event. He's like, I'll spend the night, you'll come in, replace me in the morning. Okay, but luckily that storm didn't amount to, it was the 13th highest, but you know, it wasn't, this storm was measured as the second highest storm event.
Is there any way to have a brief summary of some of the extraordinary events for the public? To know them, like a bill insert or a Palo Alto online article? It seems like I would guess 99% of the city has no idea.
Yeah,
That, I mean, people got wet, it was raining, their roads might have been a hassle to use, and that's about as far as it goes. I think it's all the people.
I could tell Janati, this is a really neat behind the scenes.
But it seems like the fact that we have
you know,
magnitude for rainwater to neighboring communities, I didn't know that. Although I looked at the creeks wondering, wow, that's a lot of water. And just these extraordinary events that occur,
Yeah.
and then some were saying that our infrastructure is working well. Thank you, community, for funding that.
yeah.
You know, your tax dollars at work type of thing.
No, I think we try, I mean, part of the problem too is that we try to convey the facts to people. I mean, what you're hearing is my emotion out of it. We try to convey the facts because that's what people want to hear and that's what a city does. And I think that's what's been published. That's what Janati, that's how it has appeared in some of our articles. But in reality, it's more in depth than that. And, you know, some will argue, well, it's your job to do this. And you're right, it is my job to do this.
And I think when something's done professionally and explicitly and perfectly, don't notice it.
Yeah.
Unless someone explains to you,
Yeah.
well, those were, 20 Olympians that made that happen. It wasn't just
Right.
those showing up late for work.
Yeah, I mean, I think the facts are absolutely important and a priority, but the story that you just told us was so compelling. And I'm sure others in the staff have their own
Oh,
stories.
yeah.
I wish there was some way that would infringe on your work time
Yeah.
to capture
Like a
that.
history project.
Right.
like a history project.
Yeah.
Really cool, I'm
Yeah.
saying 10 tons of water spent this much.
Yeah, no, I
This
think-
falls community to survive without.
There's just a lot of stuff, and it definitely has, there's an element to it. I mean, it was, working, for example, Holly, who you guys have met before, assistant director. She lives in Menlo Park, so she was able to get to the city within like 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever she got to the city. But in some cases, you start looking at like, okay, how can she drive through?
Yeah.
And luckily, we have these badges that, okay, follow PD will escort you to get through wherever we need to get to. So there's a lot of that coordination back and forth, but again, I go back to, it's just that we're a different sort of creature. We are here to provide. I mean, the service part of it is, okay, this is what we have done. And then, calling my staff the same thing, Vicky and Rajiv, okay, Rajiv, I need this, Vicky, I need this, like, forget the Happy New Year, we don't have time for that, we'll talk about that later.
And I think that'll be a nice thanks to the people who, I don't think any of us knew that people were working around the clock, spending the night.
I actually noticed people sitting in
Oh, I
city,
do.
Palo Alto utility trucks, they were all over the place, and they're just sitting there waiting for somebody to
Yeah.
tell them.
Where to go.
this."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, our tree crew, that was the one thing that the trees. If you want to listen in on the UAC meeting last night, Director Bachelor for Utilities was talking about this storm and the response from the volume of tree removal
Yeah.
and that's under Mike's team. So it's a public works utilities combo. But, we're just basically knowing when we have a storm hitting, we need to make sure we have someone here on site for that night. So, and we're past time now, so we can
Great
talk.
president.
I'll call the final agenda item, which is any other comments that have not been on the agenda and have not been addressed so far? Before I adjourn the meeting, I'm gonna ask for 3.5 minutes worth of help on my homework project.
Can I just make one comment, Hal?
Yes,
So I just want to thank the committee for recognizing, the efforts of the city staff and, the challenges with, the undersized storm drain system that is only designed for, so much water flow. And, I think you guys hit it right on the nose where it's kind of frustrating when we listen to the community who is frustrated because, they suffered personally with, flooding at their houses and loss of, being able to live there and property, but not, many of these residents probably moved here recently. They don't know maybe they don't know they're in a flood zone and that we've done all these improvements and it would have got worse. It been worse if we hadn't done these improvements and that, this was an unusual amount of rainfall. That's why I thought, what could we do better in terms of educating the public and the residents, so they're not so critical of, what they saw and what they experienced on the city, because they think, it seemed to think for some of the residents that got hit the hardest, it's like it's the city's fault. They should have done better to prevent this. Well, it's not, as you guys recognize, it's not everything's preventable, and this is one of those. And so just that understanding from you guys is just refreshing to hear that there's that it's great that some people get it. How do we educate the others so that they know and that they understand that all the work that the city has put in with improvement projects over the years and the response, because when we were out in the field, we're like, oh my gosh, can you imagine how much worse this could be if we hadn't had all these improvements done for all this time, by engineering and, and then the cleanup, because you had to be realistic too, because if unless you were like sheltered and you should have been watching the news to see what all the other communities were going through the same thing. So how could you think it's preventable? And, and that, for such a small city, for us to be able to respond as we did, and so, when I hear someone like, from the community say, hey, they haven't got to I got a little bit of dirt in my section of the street. I want to know about that because we want to come and finish cleaning. So be sure to email Karen. So, and tell all your neighbors if there's a,
311. Well, 311.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
appreciated.
you very much.
Is there anything further or can I have a motion to adjourn?
Let's do a field trip to northern Thailand where they put all the houses on stilts.
Oh,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Two mechanical things for my note, the neighborhoods that we should call out as having the sediment issue that you're talking about.
Crescent Park.
Crescent Park and, well, I only know.
Uh-oh. Did we lose audio?
It was put on mute. Maybe because they adjourned.
Yeah, Olivia's on mute, so it seems like, oh, now they're gone.
Okay, bye guys.
Hopefully we
Right.
can get that info. All I heard was Crescent Park.
Yeah,
Yeah, they must be collecting it. I think we'll get it.
Okay, I would say, Michelle, I see you're still on it. If you can hear us, can you make sure I get that?
I don't think she can hear
I
us,
don't think she can hear us.
but Olivia, I'll look into it, Mike.